real world experience. So to conclude, this served as a very foundational step towards introducing social architecture in education. And this also helped building collaboration, empathy, and social sensitivity towards real world needs. And this made me to rethink about how we educate future architects, not as just a designer, but as a catalyst for social change. So this led me to develop a tool board as part of my thesis, which is like a visual roadmap with a collection of tools and activities in the form of playing cards, and this designed for each step of the co-design process. And this will educate and equip the tutors and educators to facilitate these workshop engagements with the communities as well as the students for meaningful design outcomes. So moving forward, my focus is on refining this tool into.
We really have to round up.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions at this point from people in the audience? Okay, then maybe we then move to the next presentation.
You want to conclude the previous one?
Are the speakers still again in the meet?
They were here a moment ago.
Ah, because when I checked them out,
Jan should be here.
Okay, Jan?
Sorry, we're here. We got kicked out of the presentation and we didn't even know that we got kicked out. So we finished it. And, and then
so sorry.
that was quiet.
We were trying to reach you.
Well, we had a friend in the presentation. She was also wondering. So,
but we're back.
But we know where it stopped, so we can exactly start there if you want us to.
That would be.
We had 3 minutes left of their time, though. Maybe.
Yes, you didn't have so much. I'm just informed that you had only 3 minutes left of your time. So we would like to jump in where you were kicked out of the meeting or where we lost you. But so it's sort of short roundup. Okay. Last thing we saw was the New Day School, based on my notes.
Yes. Well, you saw this, right? Can you hear us?
Very well.
Yeah, so we try again. So this is the New Day School project that we started last year, early last year, with the Foundation of German Architects. And as you can see, the area of the school is quite difficult between these 2 rows of trees, and obviously we did not want to cut any trees. The soil that you can see here has a very high iron oxide content. We used it to fill the classrooms. We started to produce bricks on site with the local soil, and then we had to buy more soil because the school didn't want us to dig a hole on the school ground. So we filled the hole with the red soil that we made the bricks of, and then this is the in-between space between 2 classrooms at the top and 2 classrooms at the bottom. And this is a long bench that we installed, that we constructed. This is the connection between the 2 sides of the school, because we put these 4 new classrooms right in the center of these schools. And these are the class brick walls, second-hand timber structure, and these burned bricks for the floor. The school is hosting around 280 students, and this is the final building at the end of the construction, which we built in 6 weeks only, with a budget of 15,000 euros. And here a few more pictures where the classrooms are in use, and during the raining season, and a few more pictures. And this is what we're currently doing: a new school building for Quakerlock School, which is a bit outside Method. Migrant learning centers, 4 new classrooms, completely different structure, completely different walls. And this is around the end of this week. The purlins are all up, the walls are all up. Now we have 2 weeks to finish this project, and this is us. If you want to learn more about what we're doing, I'm representing Simple Architecture. Alessandra is representing the Chamber of German Architects. And then there's a charity involved called Social Architecture. which I founded together with Oliver Giebels in 2023 to support projects like these. We have other projects as well in the Global South. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Are there any questions from the audience on this project? I have a question around what you were explaining in the end, the structure between the collaboration between simple architecture with the architecture office, social architecture with the NGO supporting the structure, and then
yes. So it's a little bit complicated because we have the Chamber of German Architects is the foundation of the Architecture Chamber of Northern Westphalia. So they founded, or they had an idea of a travel scholarship for young architects in 2022, and then in 2023, and in 2024 we built the first structure. So they're funding the project. They're funding young architects to come here to have hands-on experience on buildings, to engage with the community that obviously I have engaged with for the past 12 years. So it's a sometimes a little bit. It should be a sensitive approach, and we have a lot of local workers on site at the moment, 15 local workers, all migrants from Burma. And then there is me, I'm the architect, which is simple architecture. And when we built the school during the pandemic in Uganda, in a refugee camp in Nakivale, we had really issues fundraising. We did GoFundMe campaigns, a couple of them, and it took us 3 to 4 months to raise funds of 14,000 euros to build 4 classrooms. And then here to start a charity, which is called Social Architecture, e.V. e.V. means eingetragener Verein, which is, the charity. And we're using the charity to fund project. But in this particular case now, for this project, we are not using the charity, but people of the charity are on the ground to give their time, like volunteer on this project. So this is how these 3 groups come together, sort of.
Thank you. Maybe we can elaborate a bit further also, because I'm quite, after the presentation, I'm quite intrigued also how that works, this scholarship for German architects to go there as a sort of training. But maybe that's something we can do in the discussion in the end. I would like now to invite Andrew for his presentation.
Okay, hello. Let's see if I can get this screen sharing on. So hi, thank you for providing us the opportunity to speak about our work at this year's Building Beyond Borders Symposium. I'm actually going to be speaking with 2 other people who are on this, so Najeh and August. We're going to introduce ourselves on the next slide, but you guys we just check mics really quick.
Hey.
Hello, hi August.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so our presentation is entitled Reimagine and Rebuild, Expanding the Toolbox for Youth Engagement and Reparative Urban Harvesting of the Built Environment. Our presentation is going to run chronologically through a multi-day workshop that was conducted by Cornell undergraduate Research to Action Youth. This workshop series included collecting and analyzing data on abandoned buildings in New York State, particularly the city of Binghamton, New York, identifying opportunities to implement reparative design, and developing a pamphlet guide for stakeholders and local policymakers to support circular design strategies in urban redevelopment. To start our kind of presentation, quickly, I'm Andrew Boghossian. I was a research associate in the Circular Construction Lab from 2023 to 2024, and I'm now a deconstruction coordinator at a local nonprofit.
Hello, my name is Najeh Abduljalil. I founded Cornell Undergraduate Research to Action Youth, also known as CURTA-Y, in 2023, and I served as the director from spring to fall 2023. Now I am supporting CURTA-Y's efforts as an advisor.
Hi there. My name is August Guba, and in 2023, I was actually a part of the high school co-researcher cohort. I've since graduated, and is now in 2025, I am the director of CURTA-Y.
And this work is presenting research tools that are being developed in the Circular Construction Lab, led by Felix Heisel, and the Just Places Lab, led by Jennifer Mitter. And we valued their guidance throughout this whole project.
Curtaway's organizational structure is split into two branches: the Cornell student facilitators and the high school co-researchers. The facilitators focus on curriculum design, workshop planning, and documenting the program's achievements. The high school co-researchers branch conducts research, designs circularity solutions, and shares their knowledge and collaborates with their surrounding community. This structure gives power to the youth researchers to influence the change that they want to see in their neighborhood.
To give a quick little background and context about the site, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Binghamton and its surrounding areas were a hub for industrial production. However, during the 1990s, the area faced a sharp decline as a lot of the major companies left the area. So even with community increase, many of the buildings in that era have been left vacant and forgotten, which brings us to the Masonic Temple. The Masonic Temple is a 5-story, 60,000 square foot stone and brick building, exemplifying the conditions of Binghamton's built environment. The temple provides the notion for new sung opportunities for reuse and reciprocity within Binghamton's community, as it stands for the case study of Curtaway's 2023 cohort and the presentation today.
Using drone photogrammetry and LiDAR scanning tools, the students were able to capture an exterior scan of the building. Additionally, students had the opportunity to tour the interior of the building with Binghamton's Historic Preservation Office and Broome County historian. During this tour, the students found this building was ripe with opportunities for reuse revealed through its phases of building and unbuilding.
The next workshop took the photogrammetry scan and interpreted it on a lesson on ScanR, which analyzes photogrammetry and LiDAR scans to produce embodied carbon analysis and material inventorying to enable design-based urban harvesting. This introduced co-researchers to developing technology, architectural detailing, and embodied carbon analysis. It led to an analysis session where we discussed the impacts different construction and design methods have on total embodied carbon. ScanR does this through embodied carbon totals and tonnage calculations, as well as producing salvageable material schedules. What was apparent in the conversations with the co-researchers was that embodied carbon is abstract. How much really is 20,000 tons of CO2? So we discussed the ways about conveying this information more effectively. One way was through finding the total amount of area that would be needed for a forest to sequester the equivalent amount of CO2 in a single year. This was done both in terms of acreage, which was found to be 21,000 acres, and in terms of football fields, 16,000 American football fields. Next, we had an open discussion on what the different uses of the Masonic Temple could be. This was split into two approaches. The first was on how the building could be reused if in its removal and deconstruction, and the second was if the Masonic Temple was adaptively reused.
In discussion, Curtaway thought about how to influence change in the community. Curtaway decided to build relationships and communicate our message to local stakeholders, such as Binghamton and Broome County legislators.
With the ideas flowing and a prospective audience to present these different uses of the Masonic Temple to and its aggregate parts, the co-researchers produced collages which demonstrate different reuse cases. These imagined futures for the Masonic Temple were compiled into a mailable pamphlet, which share the hard metrics, imagined futures, and the Curtaway approach to supporting community innovation and circular advancement. These scenarios were cross-sectional in their community impact, but could be interpreted in 4 broad categories: community, repair and recreation, infrastructure, and support. What was powerful in these imagined futures was that they in fact highlighted the issues which exist in Binghamton and demonstrated that the resources for improving communities are right in front of us. Amadou and Keon took the infrastructure approach, recognizing that if the steel and bricks could be reused, they could go towards constructing a bridge to connect 2 opposing sides of the city.
Another co-researcher suggested converting the Masonic Temple into a career training center. This would be ideal for high school students preparing to enter the workforce, as the building is only 200 feet away from Binghamton High School.
For my collage, I took the route of repair and recreation. So as a person in Binghamton's skate community, you know, I kind of want to involve the outer community and showcase the possibility of steel to be used as skate park features and a part of the Masonic temple itself to be space to hold them.
The pamphlet is made to be mailed to stakeholders in a renegade action to draw attention to the Masonic temple and save it from the landfill. On its arrival, it's an informational pamphlet. And as the recipient reads the information, they are carried through its stories and can even repurpose the pamphlet into a model of the Masonic temple after reading it.
The first stakeholder Kurt Hawaii was able to connect with was Binghamton City Councilman Nate Hotchkiss. With Councilman Hotchkiss, the co-researchers shared the opportunities of building preservation and reuse and were able to learn how to interact with the local government to implement changes for the betterment of the city.
Cure Hawaii has still continued onward, and with pairing with Jenny Minner's Circular Cities and Research to Action class at Cornell University. Last semester, Cure Hawaii and its co-researchers engaged with Photo Voice to employ interview techniques to interrogate what they observed in their community. As a final deliverable for this semester, the Cure Hawaii co-researchers have created the video you see playing now, which is also available on the Cure Hawaii/Just Places website.
Another work planned in the future is my honors thesis, a project that is based on my experiences at Kurt Hawaii. I will share and explore how researcher advocates can leverage social marketing tools to improve advocacy outcomes.
Thank you for spending this time with us, and we look forward to continuing to observe and discuss the possible reciprocal impacts architecture and educational practices can have on the future of the building environment. August, Najeh, and myself would like to thank both the 2023 and 2024 co-researchers and Cornell researchers on this project, as well as our affiliate organizations and grant supporting community, which all work to make this project possible. If you wish to learn more about Kurt Hawaii or download the pamphlet for yourself, check out the QR code. And if we have any other time, we can kind of have an open discussion and any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a little bit of time now. If there were some questions on this presentation from the audience. I have a question on the involvement of the community, because it was very short in your presentation, also because you had limited time. But can you elaborate a little bit on how that was organized? Was it organized throughout the process, or was it something that came at the end and that the students were during the process preparing how to involve the community? Because it wasn't entirely clear from...
Yeah, so the community definitely came in at multiple points. I can quickly share a little bit more. So the first part, of course, is that like the students are actively engaged in that community. All these co-researchers that worked on this project are from the high school. So that was kind of our initial point of community involvement, and it spread out from there as we start to talk about different stakeholders. Looking at who are kind of those policymakers, who are the kind of city and town employees that would directly engage with this project. Najeh's also worked with the initial developer that was working on this project and kind of securing the site visit and talking about like what was there before and what could be there in the future. And then Kurt Hawaii is still really engaging in that space, figuring out ways to implement further kind of involvement and other kind of projects as the club and organization continues in its next year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have the last presentation of this session by Joshua. He's here in Hasselt, so he will sit in front.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joshua Kempen. I'm a PhD student at the research group of TRACE here at the Faculty of Architecture at Hasselt University. And this study, Building with Narratives Towards a Meaningful Reuse of Architectural Fragments, is a study I've undertaken with my PhD supervisor, Wiep Leeuws, who's also here today. And in this study, we explore the reuse of architectural fragments, including valuable materials in new designs. However, the reuse of architectural fragments has been extensively discussed from an ecological perspective. We aim to focus on the potential of reconfiguration from a different perspective, namely the transfer of layers of meaning of one time or place into another. So the objective is to start a novel conceptual framework that explores the potential for regenerative architecture for both practitioners and scholars. To achieve this, we will use the term to reconfigure when we reflect on meaningful reuse in the study. This is conceptually depicted in a capital from the early Roman Empire. In this example, it serves no longer its structural purpose, but it was reconfigured into a portrait. So we can consider it as a valuable strategy to address the scarcity of materials, but at the same time, it could serve as a cultural bridge between past and present, transmitting values and meaningful messages through this reconfiguration. The physical relocation of an architectural fragment can thus create dynamic connections between what is and what was. And by placing a fragment in a secondary context, narratives may continue from a bygone past, including a shift in meaning of the original fragment. And this marks a potential for revaluation, rediscovery, or even critical commentary on the histories that the original fragment carries with it. And since this study is part of a broader PhD research that's only recently started 5 or 6 months ago, everything is still very fresh. And for today, we made the first attempt to classify the different reconfigurations we came across when doing comprehensive reviewing of projects. And we defined them based on the characteristics of the secondary elements we saw in the projects. However, as you can assume, these classifications are far from complete and they require further elaboration. But today we will focus on the first 3 presented on screen. And in the first classification, we will see 2 different practices of architects. In the second classification, we will see different examples of the reconfiguration. And in the final classification, we will have 2 cases compared. So this first classification focuses on the reconfiguration of joinery and interior elements, such as doors, window frames, floor tiles, lighting fixtures, usually layers to rapid change, since their lifespan only varies from a few years up to a few decades, depending on the function of the building. They are argued to be the most multisensory layers of our built environment, and they should be valued for their tactile qualities, which make them significant carriers of meaning. It's through their haptic qualities we can consider them as transfers of cultural, emotional, and personal memories and stories. And for instance, it can be seen in this project of General Jacques, where apartment buildings are turned into social. And through the reuse of its fragments, for example, the parquet flooring, a certain quality evokes which would have never been if this was just a public procurement project. So the found materials on site can really transfer this project beyond standard quality. Very well-known example, Sala Beckett by Flores and Prats, which really emphasizes the significance of the interior layers they found. And this was also underlined in this essay by Flores and Prats projected on screen. And I quote, they reflected the building's cultural and social past. So it's these fragments that really carry these haptic qualities for both the physical and social heritage of the building and of its local community, which was restored by the reconfiguration. Another very interesting example is the practice of Swiss architect Rudolf Oljatti. He worked mostly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he collected and stored all sorts of local joinery and interior elements to keep them safe through difficult times. He created a lifelong storage of fragments to work with, designing from the earliest stages of the design process the actual dimensions of the found objects in mind. So it was often detailed on site, working only with local craftsmen and traditional materials and methods, reconfiguring the objects as close to its original location as possible. Then we make a step to the second classification, which is based on the actual building stones. They have proven to be the most, they have proven to be valuable materials for reuse in times of scarcity and crisis. They frequently serve as the first at-hand materials for reconfiguration on destroyed sites. For example, seen in this project of the Alte Pinakothek by Hans Dulgest. He deliberately left room for judgment and interpretation of craftsmanship in tying the old fabric into the modern construction. This example I want to discuss is the Annakirche by Rudolf Schwarz. It was reconstructed in the aftermath of the Second World War after severe bombings. And after the demolition of this pre-war, the stones and typical Gothic parts were reconfigured into a post-war design. And for Schwarz, designing with these reused fragments of the former church made it possible to address a sense of loss through the reconfiguration. And when he wrote about it, he really mentioned the sacred of the stones, which is contained within the physical object. And that's becoming a very clear example of designing with meaning and memory and maybe even loss and trauma. And then, of course, we have some very well-known examples, Picciones, but also amateur architecture studio, who really design with neglected fragments, with waste, as some people would call it. But they demonstrate the potential for ordinary building materials to be reconfigured as a form of resistance against destruction, contributing to the preservation of narratives and the conservation of valuable layers of society. And most recently, we stumbled upon this project by Mesura, and it shows endangered stone fragments incorporated in a retail interior in Barcelona. These stone fragments were originally sourced from the city's hill, the Montjuic in Barcelona, and it's said that they were used by Gaudí, but that's not sure. But they are definitely Modernista heritage fragments, and it really exemplifies the potential for preserving and reusing endangered, but also non-listed fragments as a tangible link between a local history and the present of today's society and today's values of interiors. The final classification, to conclude, is the ones of murals and reliefs. They have a long-standing tradition of reconfiguration, often as layers of meaning, so they really tell stories or narratives. And again, after the Second World War, there was a notable surge in the incorporation of stone reliefs in architecture as an important memorial layer, as one of our youngest heritage. This heritage is severely endangered over the last decades, but recent projects really demonstrate the new awareness regarding these artistically represented narratives. For example, seen by this reconfiguration of a wall relief by Henry Moore for the former National Building Center in Rotterdam. And in this final classification, I would like to show you two different strategies. The first one is a very, I would say, challenging example, a sculpture which was reconfigured, a mural which was reconfigured into a sculpture, a 1950s mural. It has been reconfigured in a nearby park after its original carrier, a post-war housing block, was demolished. But in this case, we can really see that the mural is disregarded, so its ensemble value of the original composition is broken, and for us the narrative of the fragment is really discontinued. A much more integrated strategy was chosen in Antwerp by Caruso St. who redeveloped the site of the former Internationaal Zeemanshuis, where they incorporated a very prominent bas-relief into its new design, so into the new passageway of this new housing block that was built on the cleared site. And already from the earliest design phases on, you can see the fragments included in the model of the architects. So here you can really see the importance of the mural as a representation of the identity of the maritime tradition, but also of the harbor and the city of Antwerp more general. So to conclude, the study illustrates how reused fragments serve as carriers of memory, besides the ecological benefits. For example, we saw reconfigurations reflecting community identity. We saw reconfigurations addressing a sense of loss. We saw reconfigurations that foster historical approaches or traditional methodological ways of designing. So we really see a variety of reconfigurations which still need to be delved further into and further classified. And perhaps this picture of Al Jati shows the position where we are standing now. What to do with all those available fragments. We have to further elaborate on this idea of how to design with them, how to store them, how to detail them, how to incorporate them on site. We really want to methodologically capture this process. So for now, that's our conclusion for this research. However, we are very happy to hear your thoughts about this.
Are there any questions from the audience?
I have a question if I count as an audience as well.
Yes, of course.
So thank you, Joshua, for your presentation. Really nice. Very first time I hear your research, even if we're colleagues at the same university. I was wondering, like, so you elaborate on the storage of fragments, and in the beginning you showed this example for Jati, and also you concluded with that. And he has this, very cramped, let's say, space of like doors and other things. And you insist that this is actually a way also preserving memory. I wonder if next to a storage space, is there also some type of archive, or is then the person who is storing the archiver his memory? How are these memories actually kept beyond the fact that they're materially there, but what is the kind of more soft, let's say, memory that is attached? How is that being preserved? And so the first question is there an archive to complement the storage? And then later on, you kind of show other examples where the preservation is actually beyond the archive and the museum, let's say, but it's like, for example, in the case in Barcelona, it's like a store, essentially, right? So I was wondering if you are also trying to undo or kind of revise what is actually the role of the archive in the museum through kind of the way these elements are repurposed and reconfigured in different spaces.
Well, I think there are a lot of different methodologies, and every case represents a different methodology, and there are still a lot of methodologies or ways of archiving which we haven't discovered or found out yet. But I feel like, for example, the case of Al Jati is really about a local narrative or a local story, which in which a fragment per se doesn't really have that much of a value, except for its age value and the value of being a local fragment. But it really gets its value because it's integrated in a new design and because it can tell a story of a past that has already been gone. But if you see, for example, these doors, the item or the fragment on itself isn't that valuable. So for the architect, it also wasn't the case of I need to archive everything and I need to write it down, or I need to make sure that everything is preserved, but it was more an approach of I want to make sure that they are safe and get a second life in a new building. So it was more about a way of designing than about how to handle this specific object or fragment, if that answers the question.
Yes, and maybe no. I wanted to know something more. On one side, it seems that you say that the elements in the case of Al Jati were so simple that they didn't have value per se. until they were re-implemented, and then they could tell the story. So I'm wondering, is kind of the knowledge embedded in the fragments themselves, or is it in the role of the architect as